Hello, I'm Robin. This is Whisker. Welcome to Bookspin. Now, if you like cats and you like science fiction, you've come to the right place. Spacefaring cats, uplifted cats, alien cats, robot cats, you name it, they're all here. I've got a bunch of cat-themed sci-fi books that I'd like to talk about today. Some of these I've been reading just recently for Feline February, some I read previously, and these are novels for the most part, but I've also got a very interesting anthology of short stories on this theme that I'd like to mention. Plus, there's a handful of books that I've not read before, which I think are also worth a mention that I'm going to round things off with. So, without further ado, let's dive in and explore the fascinating world of feline science fiction. Let's start off with the novels. I'm going to go through these in publication order. Starting with The Green Millennium by Fritz Leiber. Now imagine a cat that induces sublime happiness to anyone who goes near it. Okay, now maybe if you're a true cat lover, that's no stretch of the imagination perhaps. But for Lucky, who is the green furred cat that is at the centre of this bizarre novel, it goes much deeper than that. He's no ordinary cat. He exudes a mysterious aura of contentment, confidence, and well-being to whomever he comes into contact with. This story opens up with the main character, Phil, encountering this cat for the first time when he shows up at his apartment. Phil is very much a down-on-his-luck protagonist who has been recently laid off in a futuristic dystopia dominated by corporate greed. And so the appearance of Lucky transforms his life, and suddenly Phil is offered a profound sense of joy, hope, and companionship in this animal. But unfortunately, he manages to lose the cat almost straight away, and so he sets out to find him again, and a bizarre adventure ensues, featuring a host of colourful characters who either help or hinder Phil on his quest. As you can imagine, there are a lot of vested interests in securing this remarkable animal. The mystery of who or what Lucky really is just one compelling aspect of this bizarre and highly entertaining novel. Next, The Door into Summer by Robert Heinlein. In this classic time travel story, we have a cat called Pete, loyal companion of the protagonist Dann, an inventor and engineer who carries Pete around with him everywhere he goes in his overnight bag. As a character, Pete is more than just a pet in this story. He plays a pivotal role in the way certain events unfold in a narrative, and he acts as a kind of emotional anchor throughout the story. And just like Phil in the last book, Dann is a down-on-his-luck protagonist, swindled by both his fiancée and his business partner, who rob him of his automata business. Leaving him with nothing, Dann decides to go into cryosleep for 30 years along with his cat, so that he can wake up to a fresh start in the future and proceed to fix what went wrong in his life. Now, the title of this novel, The Door into Summer, is quite interesting. Heinlein explained that this came from watching his own cat's behaviour in real life, refusing to go outside into the cold in winter, wandering around the house, instead looking for the door into summer. This habit is carried over into Pete's behaviour in the novel, becoming a kind of metaphor for Dann's own longing for a better future and a time when he can overcome his problems and enjoy comfort and security in life. Beyond that, there's a lot for cat lovers to appreciate in this book, with plenty of wry and witty observations on feline behaviour throughout. Let's move on. The next book I'd like to talk about is The Cats by Nick Sharman. We are now entering the realm of pulp sci-fi horror, especially of the animal attack variety. The cats in this story are the result of an experiment in biological warfare gone wrong, and the development of a deadly new bacterium. This bacterium has the effect of drastically changing the animal's personality when the temperature rises, transforming it into a ferocious killer with a thirst for human blood. Unfortunately, a lab full of infected cats managed to escape into the streets of London in the middle of a heat wave. Chaos ensues, and they start attacking and killing people en masse. Another effect of the disease is that it transforms the cat's behaviour so they start gathering together in groups and hunting people in packs. It's a ludicrous premise, and as creature features go, this one is particularly trashy, full to the brim with implausible plot developments, shallow characters, and ridiculously bloody action scenes. In fact, I was cheering on the cats throughout much of this novel, if only to kill off all of the annoying one-dimensional characters. As trashy as it is, though, I do think that the concept of pets turning on humans is a great horror premise, and there is some entertainment value if you enjoy this kind of thing. Next, Divine Endurance by Gwyneth Jones. This is a very different novel, a strange one. This is a post-apocalyptic novel set in a far future Southeast Asia, in which we follow a young bioengineered android princess called Chosen Among the Beautiful, aka Cho, who is raised in isolation by a sentient cat robot known as Divine Endurance. As technology crumbles around them, human civilization has all but collapsed and is rife with political turmoil, and the pair set out on a voyage across Indochina in search of Cho's long-lost brother. This is a rich and poignant novel which is written in a very meandering style that takes a bit of getting used to. It's actually pretty desultory, and while it's definitely science fiction in terms of its technology and the basic premise and the world building, the storytelling itself has a kind of fantasy aesthetic to it, almost like a fairy tale, a very dark fairy tale. So this book may not be for everyone. It's a kind of mystery box of a novel in a way, but I do think that the mysterious feline character of Divine Endurance is one of the more compelling aspects of the read. So it's worth checking out. Next up, we're going to go for something a bit more recent, a bit more modern, with Mort by Robert Repino. This is an epic, action-packed, post-apocalyptic novel featuring the tough feline protagonist Mort, aka Sebastian. Sebastian is the name his owners gave him in his early life as a regular house cat. But everything changes with the advent of the Change, capital C, a bizarre event that uplifts domestic animals across the globe, causing them to rise up against their human masters under the influence of a race of intelligent ants. Cats, dogs, and various other species grow in size, become bipedal, develop hands, and gain human-level intelligence, initiating a radical new era in history known as the War with No Name. Sebastian, under his new post-change name Mort, becomes a charismatic war hero in this conflict, all the time searching for his long-lost friend, a dog he loved before all this began and he was just a normal cat. This is a really strange and mind-bending read, with a weird and wonderful cast of animal characters, albeit highly anthropomorphized, at least for the mammals, not so much the ants. But this is no cozy read. It's actually pretty shocking and violent at times. I would say that this novel is an absorbing blend of bloody military sci-fi, absurdist post-apocalyptic fiction, and philosophical satire. Kind of like Animal Farm on steroids. And now for the most recent book on this list. The Space Cat by Nnedi Okorafor. A bit of an unusual one, this. This is actually a graphic novel from my daughter's collection, but I can tell you this was a delight to read. Nnedi Okorafor is an accomplished SFF writer for both adults and children, and in this story we follow Periwinkle, an oriental short hair with an adventure spirit based on the author's real-life cat. Periwinkle leads a double life. Outside of his normal family pet existence during the day, at night he explores the cosmos in his own custom-built spaceship. But when his family decide to relocate from the United States to Nigeria, taking Periwinkle with them, everything shifts. And all this is the precursor to a larger existential threat that Periwinkle must overcome. Something insidious and extraterrestrial in origin. This is a fun read. Periwinkle is a likeable, playful and eccentric feline protagonist, and beyond his extraordinary qualities, he embodies many typical feline traits that add to his endearing appeal. It's a quick read, written with warmth and charm, and beautifully illustrated, that can be enjoyed by all ages. Now, I'll be remiss of me not to give short stories a mention here, where you can find some of the very best that feline science fiction has to offer. Let's take, for example, this anthology, Cats in Space and Other Places, edited by Bill Fawcett. This includes a wide variety of cat-themed stories. We have, for instance, the story that opens this volume, the absolute classic, The Game of Rat and Dragon by Cordwainer Smith, which features telepathic spacefaring cats. These brave creatures embark on perilous FTL journeys inside a tiny space vessel, working alongside their human navigators to fight off the dragons, which are terrifying entities that exist in interstellar space that threaten to crush those who cross their path. This is one of Smith's most famous and enduring stories, and a great showcase for his appreciation of cats, who are the real heroes of this story. And in fact, cats appear in a number of his stories in different forms, and there is another story, also by Cordwainer Smith, later on in his collection. Another highlight I'd like to mention is a story called Ordeal in Space by Robert Heinlein, who, as we've already seen, appears to have been a bit of a cat lover. This is a particularly entertaining story. It's actually quite a tense narrative. It's about a retired spaceman suffering from severe trauma, whose life has turned around when a dramatic episode involving an encounter with a kitten forces him to confront his fears. And then there is another story in this collection which I have to mention. It's called Black Destroyer by A.E. Van Vogt, and this is an SF horror novelette featuring a terrifying feline extraterrestrial antagonist on an alien planet. As the narrative switches between human and alien points of view, we witness this creature's murderous attempts to wipe out the human colonists in a truly dark and compelling tale of predation and survival. Those are just a few highlights in this collection, but there are many more short stories in here. They do vary a little bit in quality. I won't go through them all here, otherwise we'd be here all day. I am planning to review this book in a separate video though, in which I'll discuss all of the stories, so keep an eye out for that if you'd like to know more. I'll post a link in the description of this video when that video is ready. A few more books worth mentioning before we move on. I'm just going to whiz through these. The Cabinet by Unsoo Kim is a very strange Korean SF novel that I think deserves a mention. It's not as cat-centric as the titles mentioned so far, so it doesn't belong on the main list, but this book does feature a subplot about a man whose life goal it is to turn into a cat to appease the woman he loves. Just one of the many weird things about this book. Bizarre, but compelling. Another very weird one is Norstrilia by Cordwainer Smith. In this case, we have a man who actually does turn into a cat. It'll take too long to explain here. It'll all make sense if you read it. This is one wild ride of a novel. And then we have Catface by Clifford Simak, a highly entertaining time travel novel. The eponymous Catface, in this case, is an extraterrestrial being that takes the form of a disembodied, grinning cat's face, shows up in the protagonist's orchard, and opens up time portals into the distant past. I envisioned something like the Cheshire Cat when reading this one. Finally, Pet Sematary by Stephen King. Do undead cats count? Okay, I admit this isn't actually sci-fi, it's horror, but it's an absolute classic. Church has to be one of the most memorable and unsettling pets I've ever come across in fiction. This is a stunningly gripping horror novel. So those are all my recommendations. Before we wrap things up though, here are a few more cat-themed SF titles that I found in my research into this area and their descriptions I found online. I haven't read any of the following, so I can't vouch for their quality, but they could be interesting. Starting off with Starter Villain by John Scalzi. Charlie, a broke substitute teacher, inherits a supervillain business from his deceased uncle, only to find his business is managed by a pair of genetically engineered, computer-savvy, talking spy cats named Hera and Persephone. Now, if you've read John Scalzi before, you probably know what kind of humour to expect with this one. Looking at the premise, I'm not sure if this one really appeals to me, but there you have it. And then we have Outworld Cats by Jack Lovejoy. When two extraterrestrial felines are stranded aboard a space station, they are captured and brought to Earth, where they use their skill as telepaths to stop an industrial mogul from taking over the planet. This sounds quite intriguing, but the reviews on Goodreads aren't exactly inspiring. Breed to Come by Andre Norton is another book I found. When desperate measures failed to control what men had begun and could not stop, they fled their polluted planet, leaving behind an epidemic virus born of experimentation. Yet unlike man, whom the disease could destroy, the animals of the planet thrived, each generation more forceful and intelligent than the last. In the ruins of what was once a university complex, a vast band of cats, more highly evolved than those on the outside, sought to master the works of man. And they learned that the demons, as men were called, were not legendary, but real, as was the danger of their return to the planet. And then one day, a spaceship landed bearing the feared exile race. That's quite an intriguing premise, I think. Post-apocalyptic, intelligent cats. Sounds really cool. I would definitely be up for reading this one. Finally, I discovered that there are 2 additional Feline SFF anthologies out there. Magicats, edited by Dann and Gardner Dozois, appears to be more fantasy-based, but does include some feline sci-fi. And Supernatural Cats, edited by Claire Necker, which has more of a horror emphasis, but also includes some SF and fantasy stories as well. Both these collections include a bit of overlap with the Cats in Space anthology in terms of their story content. That's it. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on these books if you've read any of them, or indeed if you have any other feline sci-fi recommendations that you'd like to share. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more sci-fi content.